sound of this head's a little bit
tightened up a little bit.
Yeah. Are you playing Madonna? Basir? Okay. Okay.
I'm not in the I may one day get the process.
Okay, one day. Sorry.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama,
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Krishna,
Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa, Prabhupada Ashto, Tadasada Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa, Prabhupada Ashto, Tadasada Shri Srimad, His Divine Grace, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Binda Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder, Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. ISKCON Guru Vrinda Ki Jai. Prem Sakaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhana Ki Jai. Shri Vrindavan Dhamma Ki Jai. Shri Mayapur Dhamma Ki Jai. Jagannath Puri Dhamma Ki Jai. Tulsi Bhakti Devi Ki Jai. Ganga Jamuna Mai Ki Jai. Sankirtan Jagna Ki Jai. Brihamadanga Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai. The Transcendental Lordship Shri Shri Radha Govinda Ki Jai. Gaur Premanande, Samaveda Bhakta Vinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Shri Guru and Gauranga. So hopefully everyone will be able to hear me without the microphone. We don't have the microphone stand today. But we'll give it our best. Yes?
We can hold the mic for you.
No, it's all right. I'll turn the volume up.
All right. Alex, second, can you hear okay?
Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading from Bhagavad-Gita, as it is, Chapter 8. Chapter is entitled Attaining the Supreme, and we're on text 2 today. Okay, so how do you usually do it? We don't have it up on the board. Do you have Gitas to hand out? Probably not, huh?
People sometimes use their phone with the database website.
Okay.
And sometimes you recite the verse, like, you lead everyone, and sometimes the speakers don't. It's totally up to you.
Okay, so I got a 3-hour class that I got to compress into an hour, so maybe I'll just keep it simple.
Sure.
All right. Adijagya katam kotra dehesmin madhusudana prayana kale cha katam jinosi niyatatmabi. Who is the Lord of sacrifice, and how does he live in the body, O Madhusudan? And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? Is there anything that I could get to that would raise this up here a little bit? I see something back on that table there. It looks
some books maybe or something like that?
Yeah, something that could just bring it up to like about here. Hopefully not block the camera. You might have to put your camera up a little higher.
Is it okay if I take this?
Okay, I'm going to read the translation again. Perfect.
This works? Janmashtami Prabhu?
Little unusual.
Yeah, but
What's,
here you go.
you're going to cover it over with something? Oh, okay. Well,
No, but it can be like this, Prabhu. Maybe.
put it on the side. Well.
And then you put it back. How about like that?
I'd rather have that. Why don't you just cover it with something? You got a cloth?
No, because everything is moved, so
Yeah.
that is today.
They changed
all our stuff is
everything.
packed and-
15 years, everything was the same. Today
Anybody
it's
got a
different.
chutter? I know what we could
Oh,
use.
Sasha has a
So, but you got your
Hold on.
chutter. Yeah, just
Sasha.
put a chutter on it. That'll look all, that'll be fine.
This, we just
Yeah,
put this
yeah,
on
yeah.
top, like this. Already folded, we just overlap it.
Yeah, just, there you go. Perfect.
That's it, perfection.
Okay, we don't need that. As we say in Bengal, Kupbalo.
Huh?
Kupbalo. Very good.
I was thirsty to hear you preach, today I'm gonna hear it.
Okay. There's something here. What's this? Okay. Here's the translation again. Who is the Lord of sacrifice, and how does he live in the body, O Madhusudan? And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? Purport. Lord of sacrifice may refer to either Indra or Vishnu. Vishnu is the chief of the primal demigods, including Brahma and Shiva, and Indra is the chief of the administrative demigods. Both Indra and Vishnu are worshipped by Yajna performances. But here, Arjuna asks, who is actually the Lord of Yajna, sacrifice, and how the Lord is residing within the body of the living entity. Arjuna addresses the Lord as Madhusudana. Anybody know what that means? Madhusudana.
Yeah, he killed the demon.
Madhu is a demon, and then what's this word? Madhusudana means? Madhu is a demon, yes. And Sudana means the killer of demons, or the demon Madhu. Right? Because Krishna once killed a demon named Madhu. Actually, these questions, which are of the nature of doubts, should not have arisen in the mind of Arjuna, because Arjuna is a Krishna conscious devotee. Therefore, these doubts are like demons. Since Krishna is so expert in killing demons, Arjuna here addresses him as Madhusudan, so that Krishna might kill the demoniac doubts that arise in Arjuna's mind. Interesting beginning. Okay, now This is the important part of the whole chapter. We're getting an introduction to it. Now the word prayana kale in this verse is very significant because whatever we do in life will be tested at the time of death. Arjuna is very anxious to know of those who are constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness. What should be their position at that final moment? At the time of death, all the bodily functions are disrupted, and the mind is not in a proper condition. Thus, disturbed by the bodily situation, one may not be able to remember the Supreme Lord. Maharaj Kulakshekar, a great devotee, prays, "My dear Lord, just now I am quite healthy, and it is better that I die immediately, so that the swan of my mind may seek entrance at the stem of your lotus feet." The metaphor is used because the swan, a bird of the water, takes pleasure in digging into the lotus flowers. Its sporting proclivity is to enter the lotus flower. In India, there's all these really beautiful lotus ponds, and the lotus flowers are so beautiful. The metaphor is used because the swan, a bird of the water, takes pleasure in digging into the lotus flowers. Its sporting proclivity is to enter the lotus flower. Maharaj Kulakshekar says to the Lord, "Now my mind is undisturbed and I am quite healthy. If I die immediately thinking of your lotus feet, then I'm sure that my performance of your devotional service will become perfect." But if I have to wait for my natural death, then I do not know what will happen, because at that time the bodily functions will be disrupted. My throat will be choked up, and I do not know whether I shall be able to chant your name. Better let me die immediately. Arjuna questions how a person can fix his mind on Krishna's lotus feet at such a time. Adidyagya katam kotra dehesmin madhusudana prayana kale chakatam nyeno si niyatatmabi. Who is the Lord of sacrifice? And how does he live in the body, O Madhusudan? And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death? Om Ganatimanandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Umitam Gina Tashmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Now, I'm prepared to give an extremely philosophical class, but I'm thinking there's quite a few new people here, and maybe it'd be a little difficult to process it all. So what I was thinking about, does anybody know what is the most wonderful thing in this world? Now this is actually a question in the Mahabharata. That, yes?
Everybody thinks that every day we know that somebody is dying, but we never think that we will not die.
Yeah, it's Hani Hani Bhutani Kachanti Yamalayam Shesha Stavaram Ichanti Kimashta Yamata Param. Yamaraj, the Lord of Death, right? You know, he's the one that takes people to the hellish planets. He asked Yudhishthira, they had a conversation, what is the most wonderful thing in this world? And when I just quoted the Sanskrit, so every day, thousands and thousands, millions of people are going to, millions of living entities are going to the kingdom of death, but yet those who are remaining are making an arrangement for a permanent situation, thinking it's not going to happen to me. So what I'm wondering, and this point here, you know, there's 8 questions that Arjuna is asked in the first, in the first 2 verses, and then Krishna gives answers in the last, in 3 and 4. So I'm not going to go into all the details, but I'm going to get into, I just lost my, let's see, okay. I'm going to get into what Krishna focuses on. The last question. How to know you at the point of death. Prayana Kale. And in text number 5 of this chapter, I don't want to steal the show from future speakers.
No problem.
Okay? But I'm going to, okay. Ante kale chamam eva smaran muktva kalevaram yaprayati samad bhavam yati nastyatra samshaya. And whoever at the end of life quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. Coincidentally, tomorrow I fly to Miami for my my sister's funeral. And you know how everybody sings happy birthday to you, you know, when it's your birthday? But I never heard anybody sing happy death day to you. Happy, no. I'm not trying to be ridiculous, but you know, it actually can be a very, very transcendental and blissful experience. And I had this experience in my life. I was caring for my, you remember Nirguna, right?
Definitely.
Oh, what a fireball, huh?
Yeah, you two were a pair after starting books.
Yeah, we were partners for 18 years. He was, does anybody know what utsaha means? Few of the old timers do. It means enthusiasm. He was the personification of utsaha. Super, super enthusiastic with book distribution, anything that he would do. He was actually a pre-medical student, I think in the University of Louisiana, something like that. And then someone gave him a Back to Godhead magazine, and it just really touched him. And the first painting he saw in Back to Godhead that really struck him was of Giriraj lifting Govardhan Hill. One finger. Oops, there you go. But that hand doesn't work right. Okay. So what I'm wondering, do any of you think about the enormous challenge that you face at the time of death? Does that occur to you? You know, the older you get, the more obvious it becomes. I'm 75, I'll be 76 in October, and I don't know how much longer I got. I'm shooting for 108, but let's see whether I make it or not, you know?
Let's celebrate it.
Yeah, okay. When I get to 108, we'll have a big celebration, all right? Yeah, my father lived in 96. But Prabhupada, in a morning walk in Vrindavan in 72 with Dhananjaya, said a very interesting thing. He said, health first, sadhana second, and service third. Not service first, sadhana second, and health, the hell with it. Okay, you know, he put a real high priority on it. He'd every day go on japa walks, and I go on japa walks every day. I do yoga every day. I've been in a strict Ayurvedic diet for over 6 years now, and it really works. People are amazed that this old guy can do what I do in Mayapur, running around trying to get things done. So I'm going to dive into the nectar. What I'll do, and there was, those of you that have been around ISKCON for a while and have read some of the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita, either the full version or the abridged version, know how difficult it was for Srila Prabhupada to establish the Juhu temple in Mumbai. And he called in one of his most expert managers, Tamal Krishna Maharaj, to kind of carry the ball on it, because there was so many challenges. Mr. Nair trying to cheat the devotees, and kind of one thing after, and the contractors cheating, and you know, vipralipsa is a very strong tendency in the material world. Vipralipsa means the cheating propensity. Anybody experience that here in New York City once in a while? or every day? You're a lawyer, you know all about it. So, Tamal Krishna Maharaj started carrying the ball. He started, really making things work. And one day, because it was so challenging, one day he exclaimed to Srila Prabhupada, Srila Prabhupada, how can I think of Krishna? My mind is simply filled with temple finances. And Prabhupada said, yes. Many lifetimes we've wasted on ourselves. If just in this one lifetime we can dedicate heart and soul to pushing on Lord Chaitanya's movement, then at the end, even if we're not completely perfect, Lord Chaitanya will personally come and take us back to Godhead. It's a promise. And Harisari, he was with Prabhupada as his servant, secretary for a lot of the last couple of years. And he heard Prabhupada say this several times, numerous occasions. And so Nirguna was the epitome of dedicating heart and soul to pushing on Lord Chaitanya's movement. Now Lord Chaitanya, those are real new, do we have a photo of him, a picture? Yeah, there he is. He's right in the center, the Panchatattva. He's Krishna. He manifested in this age of Kali, a little over 500 years ago. And Lord Krishna was here a little over 5,000 years ago. But Lord Chaitanya is the most merciful of all the avatars. He came in a very difficult age where people tend towards very, sinful lifestyles, right? We look out the window, we can see evidence of that. And but Lord Chaitanya gave formulas so that even the most sinful, I think I qualify, before I joined the movement, I was very qualified in that way. I got the Guinness World Book of Record for the most sinful hippie in North America. I'm only joking. But he gave a formula where we could revitalize our dormant Krishna consciousness. And what's that formula? Anybody know? I know Dr. Philip knows. He's like the most fixed in japa in the Brooklyn Temple.
We just did kirtan chanting.
Yeah. So chanting japa, chanting kirtan, it's so blissful. We can directly associate with Krishna in this way. Nama Chintamani Krishnas, Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha, Puna Shuddho Nitya Mukto, Binaton Namanamino. Krishna and his name are not different. And you actually begin to realize that the more you chant. You can experience Krishna's presence coming to you. And now I'm going to distribute some books at the end of this because I'm addicted. I can't stop doing that. But it's a really remarkable thing. And this is, now I'm going to tell the story of Nirguna's departure. And it wasn't, it was a happy death day. It was incredible. There was all these devotees around and all these miracles started taking place. And everyone was in complete bliss, including Nirguna.
When was that again?
Well, I found out, right after Gaur Purnim 2007, I got an email from one of the devotees that were on our traveling Sankirtan parties that Nirguna was very sick and he'd gone to the Bhaktivedanta hospital. He spent $15,000 in Atlanta to try and get a diagnosis, and they still wanted more money, more testing. So he went to the Bhaktivedanta hospital in Mumbai, and they tested him. He went to the Tata Cancer Institute as well, which is kind of the #1 cancer institute and hospital in India. And they found that he had very serious tumor in his chest. It was spindle sarcoma. And so I started talking to him on the phone after he got there. He was like, this looks like terminal cancer. And so I had made friends with a homeopathic doctor that lives near Mayapur. And he had a very powerful reputation for being able to turn around terminal cancer cases. and they built a wing at the Calcutta National Institute of Homeopathy in Calcutta, a wing specially for him to deal with terminal cancer cases. So one second, I want to do. There's one devotee that Radhanaswami Hare Krishna Prabhu. He's a brahmachari in London, in England. I was friends with, and so I brought him to Mayapur, and Nirguna came to Mayapur from Mumbai. I had to leave India because my family, and my visa had expired. So I met Nirguna at the airport, and Hare Krishna also came. And the whole idea was that he'd spend 2 weeks in Mayapur, and then he'd go into Calcutta to the National Institute of Homeopathy to get treatment there. And he would continue the treatment in Mayapur, but he would get the blessing of being in the Dham with the most Shakti in Kali Yuga. This is what, in Bhaktivinoda Thakur's book, Navadvip Dham Mahatmya, this is a description of Prikrama that Lord Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya were together in their mission, just like Krishna and Balaram. And I was going to say about Lord Nityananda, I lost the train of thought. Anybody
Well,
remember?
you were talking about how Nirguna was going to go from the institute.
Oh yeah. No, I know. The Navadvip Dham Mahatmya. This is the book that Bhaktivinoda Thakur compiled. It's a description of Lord Nityananda taking Jiva Goswami. Prabhupada described him as the most brilliant scholar in history. He wrote so many books on Gaudiya Vaishnava philosophy. And Lord Nityananda took Jiva Goswami and Prikrama all over Sridham Mayapur. And one point that he made to Jiva Goswami is that of all the dhams in Kali Yuga, Sridham Mayapur has the most Shakti. In other words, the most power in terms of purifying our hearts and bringing us, and enabling us to accelerate our spiritual advancement and come closer to Krishna. And as Kali Yuga progresses, that Shakti increases. I've experienced that. I moved to Mayapur in 1997, and then it's amazing how that's just changed there. And in 2 years, they're going to be opening the world's largest temple, the Temple of the Vedic Planetarium. And Braj Vilas was just here, and he promised no more delays. It's going to happen. And but when I moved to Mayapur, and I, with my shaved head and white skin, and there were very few visitors, Indian pilgrims, that would come, and they would look at me. I kind of felt like I was, they would say, "Wow, look at that tilak, and he's got, shaved head and Sika." They couldn't believe it. I felt like I was an animal in the zoo. It was just, such an unusual thing, the way they would look at me. But now, they had, maybe 200-300 would come in a day. But now, regularly after Mangalartik, they announce how many visitors. During the high season, we'll have 85,000, 90,000 visitors in one day. So Krishna consciousness is spread like wildfire in West Bengal. What to speak of in Bangladesh, it's like a little problematic there because of the way the Islamic leadership is handling our movement there. But anyway, we're persevering. So it's very powerful, and Nirguna really wanted to take advantage of it. So I had to go to America, and then I came back a couple months later, and his condition had worsened substantially. He was in a lot of pain, and the tumor enveloped his spinal cord, his esophagus, and his aorta, the main artery to the heart. And it wasn't, he did some chemotherapy, but he felt so sick after the second session, he said, no, forget it, so he opted for the homeopathy. And but the cancer was eating into his spine, and so he had a lot of pain in his legs. And then we discovered that by vigorously massaging his feet and legs 24/7, the pain was practically negligible. It was really remarkable. And we had to do it 24/7. If we didn't do it in his sleep, then he'd wake up in the middle of the night in excruciating pain, and then it would take 3 or 4 hours for it to subside. He didn't want to go on barbiturates because he wanted to be fully conscious of Krishna right up until the end of his life. So I organized more and more the community. Actually, what I did, I called Radha Swami, because I knew there was different postings in the internet of how they were assisting the departure of very senior devotees in Chopati, Mumbai. And asked him if he could send 10 brahmacharis to help out, because it was just too much for our care team. We had one Mataji Ramadevi that was a midwife, and was trained in medical science, and she was kind of heading up the team, but it was just too much for what we had. And then Maharaj responded, no, Janmashtami, don't do that. The best thing for Nirguna and the best thing for the Mayapur community is that you organize the community to assist him in his departure. So that's exactly what we did. We ended up having 35 men, and it wasn't just tickle massage. It was vigorous, and they were going like I think we had it with some did half hour, but some did hour-long shifts, and we were just continuous. Interestingly enough, it was a way for devotees to enter into a deep relationship. It's kind of like Vedic culture to touch someone's feet, and then it was a real amazing transcendental pleasure to have the opportunity to massage Srila Prabhupada's feet. That was, not so many devotees got a chance to do that, but when they did, they just were in complete bliss. So this was a continual 24/7. And then we took it to another level. I brought in senior devotees, Pankajangri, Jananivas. These are the identical twins. Pankajangri's left his body like 4 years ago. But these were the head pujaris in Mayapur for years. Hari Sari would come and read from his unpublished transcendental diary. He had spent so much time with Prabhupada, and he kept a diary, and from that diary he wrote remarkable description of Prabhupada's final days. And they became very close friends. And then we had the Gurukul boys come, and they would have kirtan for an hour after school. And then the young girls would come after the boys, and they'd do kirtan for an hour. And then the adults would come in the evening. So it was kind of like a whole community effort to enable Nirguna to live in a very blissful way. But it got so challenging, even with the caretakers, they just couldn't handle the service load. It was because he was so sick. So again, I spoke with Radha Swami, and he agreed. He sent Dr. Avanish. He was finishing up his palliative care training in Mumbai. Palliative care means caring for someone at the end of life. And so he came, and he was really sweet Vaishnava, did everything he could. And so we were managing. It was actually quite blissful. And then we'd take Nirguna and Prikrama to the temple, take him up on the stage before Panchatattva altar. It was just like amazing, how, and he was happy. It was difficult for him, because he was, but I was consulting with one Mataji Sangita. She's a Prabhupada disciple in Philadelphia, whose whole expertise is in palliative care, and she's actually written a book about caring for people at the end of life. And between Radhanath Swami, his coaching, and hers, we got through a lot of the challenges that he faced. Oftentimes, people, even devotees, they go through like kind of an emotional trauma. I'm going to die, like that. They start thinking about this, and it's really hard for them to process. And a couple of years before Nirguna got into, the dying process, his wife of 20 years left him, and she stopped practicing Krishna consciousness. And she came back in to be with him. And, I was teaching Nectar of Instruction at the VIT in Vrindavan. And so I met her at the airport in Calcutta. And I could tell she wasn't very serious about Krishna consciousness at that time. And, but before I left Mayapur to go to Calcutta and then on to Vrindavan, I was encouraging Nirguna, look, this is, what's the verse? Pita nasasha swajano nasasha, no, what is that? How's this? No, Guru nasashat swajano nasashat, Pita nasasha is divan. Got old brainitis here, forgive me. But this is, one shouldn't, I know the verse, it's just sometimes I stumble, as I'm trying to recite it. But one should not become a guru, a father, a mother, a worshipable demigod, unless one can deliver his dependents from the cycle of repeated birth and death. So I recited that to Nirguna, gave him some, like Prabhupada's purport on it, and he took it seriously. So he actually got her back into Krishna consciousness, got her chanting japa again. So it was remarkable. Anyway, I'm going to fast forward it a little bit. There was, there's a very important point. He told one of the caregivers that he'd had a vision that he was a manjari in Krishna Lila. Sounds a little unusual. What is a manjari? These are cowherd girls that are doing everything they can to assist Srimati Radharani in her service and her relationship to Krishna. So, and they also have a lot of devotional affection and attraction for Krishna. It's kind of the whole mood of our sampradaya. Most of the previous acharyas were this manjari or that manjari. So, but he also revealed, and he started talking to Harisari about it, and they had lengthy discussions about this, because it's actually a significant part of the devotional process, coming to that platform of understanding what our actual relationship with Krishna is. And then in the conversations with Harisari, he had another dream, or kind of a vision, and he was waiting for an invitation to go back to the spiritual world, as a manjari. So that conversation continued, and Harisari actually wrote about it, and it was posted in dandavat.com website. My antivirus program doesn't allow me to access dandavat.com anymore. They got to upgrade their facility. So anyway, that was something that was a constant meditation and subject of discussion for Nirguna, waiting for the invitation to go back to the spiritual world. And then we had a big, because he had so much attraction for Giriraj, for Govardhan Hill, Ramadevi, who was heading up the care team until Dr. Avnish came, had a large Govardhan Shila. And so we put it on the side of Nirguna's bed, so he had darshan all the time. And then as he got, in the last month, because of the cancer, the tumor, it blocked his esophagus, so he couldn't swallow solid foods. He was already he had a small body, but it got to the point where his thighs were about the size of my wrists, and he went from his weight before the cancer was around 110 pounds, and he got down to it was about 45 pounds, because he wasn't eating, he was just drinking a little bit. And even that was difficult for him. So then Harisari decided to just put Giriraj, we had like a hospital bed, that would tilt back and tilt up. And Harisari just put Giriraj on Nirguna's chest. So he had the big bright eyes, staring at him all the time, and just he was in so much bliss. And then I would also arrange for senior devotees, and then as Nirguna got sicker and sicker, Harisari just put it right in put Giriraj in Nirguna's hand. And he just, Nirguna was always looking at it, he was in such close contact with Giriraj. He had such affection for Giriraj. So then I would also arrange for senior devotees that Nirguna had relationships with to speak with them on the phone. So one evening, this was after the adult kirtan had ended and most of the devotees had left, I went to Nirguna, and trying to think of the name of the devotee that was massaging his feet. He was the indexer for the BBT. It's slipping my mind. Senior brainitis. Anyway, I asked him, I went to Nirguna. I arranged for Jayapataka Swami to speak with Nirguna. And Jayapataka Swami was the guru of Nirguna was a Prabhupada disciple. And his wife was a disciple of Jayapataka Swami. And Nirguna was the temple president, the president of the Murari Sevak farm in Tennessee, and for several years. And Jayapataka Swami was his GBC. They had a nice, loving relationship. So that one night, and I was telling you about, we had a special Govardhan Puja before Govardhan Puja because we didn't think Nirguna would last that long, because his health was so weak. And boy, it was ecstatic, there were all these devotees, a huge Govardhan hill right in the room. This is actually where he was situated was the first Mayapur Institute classroom, which was the first flat that I purchased in Mayapur. And that we purchased that, and then we moved upstairs, moved my family upstairs, and I built another floor, which became my office and yoga room. So there was an ecstatic Govardhan Puja, but Nirguna was really having trouble. His health was really weak. So one night, this is a couple of days after Govardhan Puja, I located Jayapataka Swami in Los Angeles, and I went to Nirguna. It was around 8:15, something like that. I said, Nirguna Prabhu, Jayapataka Swami will speak with you in 5 minutes. And his body language, his energy is just, leave me alone, will you? And I couldn't relate to it. So I went to the devotee that was massaging his feet. So what's going on with Nirguna? He says, I don't know, Janmashtami, but I have a strong feeling he's about ready to leave his body. So I went in, Dr. Avnish had taken rest in the back room in the flat, and I woke him up and said, I told him what this devotee had said, and said, okay, I'll check it out. So he, took his blood pressure, checked his pulse, measured, timed his breathing, and he came to me and said, yeah, he's only got a few hours left to go. He couldn't even detect blood pressure, and the pulse was very slow, and he was only breathing twice a minute. So I called the senior devotees back. We had all-night kirtan. We had about 80 devotees that showed up. And then after Mangal Artik, I made an announcement and asked everybody to come. I didn't stay up all night because the next day I had to deal with the legalities of his, because Nirguna's American citizen. I had to go to the Krishna Nagar and work with the government officials, etc. And so that we could cremate his body. And but so I went back downstairs, and he was just kind of in an unconscious state most of the time. And then finally he came back to consciousness, and I arranged. Radhanath Swami was coming with a whole yatra of 5,000 devotees to Mayapur, and I called Radhanath Swami, and he said, "Okay, I'll talk to Nirguna." So in those days there wasn't oftentimes very good connections for mobile phones. A lot of times it would just go out, the connection. So I put like a headset, wired headset into Nirguna's ears, and after like 10-15 minutes I picked the phone up and said, "Maharaj, are you still there?" He said, "Yes, Janmashtami, but I gotta go, I'm gonna miss my flight." So okay, so then Nirguna again lost consciousness. And one of the points that Radhanath Swami had made to me was that even if someone's unconscious in the dying process, he's close to death, if there's kirtan going on around him, it's very beneficial, very purifying. So we kept the kirtan going. Actually, the kirtan was going all night long. It was like amazing. He became really good friends with Kurma, the cook from Australia, who's an amazing kirtaniya. Not many people know him as a cook, but he's also an incredible kirtaniya. And Nirguna and he had become very good friends because they both were on the Polish tour and they stayed together the summer before. Nirguna got really sick. And they just were very close with each other. So he was leading the kirtan most of the evening. And then the kirtan continued into the morning. And then around noon, the kirtan really revved up. Also, Bhakti Vishwambara Madhava Swami, he was there, and he just dedicated a month to be with Nirguna. And anyway, because it looked like he was going to be leaving that day, and so the room was just packed with devotees, and the kirtan was just amazingly blissful. It was so transcendental. And then in the middle of the kirtan, Bhakti Vishwambara Madhava Swami was sitting to my right next to Nirguna's head, his shoulders, and then the bed was elevated slightly, so he was up and he could, have darshan of Giriraj on his chest and in his hand. And across on the other side from Bhakti Vishwambara Madhava Swami was Harisari, and then Pankajangri and Jananivas were on that side as well. And in the kirtan, it was just rip-roaring kirtan. And then all of a sudden, Bhakti Vishwambara Madhava Swami just left his body, I think about a year ago, in Vrindavan. And in the middle of the kirtan, he grabs my leg and shakes it. Janmashtami, look, Nirguna is singing along with the kirtan. And I look over, and Nirguna's lips were moving. And then all of a sudden, he opens his eyes, he raises his hands up in the air like this, and starts chanting along. He had the most blissful look on his face. And then in the middle of this, really powerful kirtan, very loud, he says in a loud voice that I couldn't hear, but Harisari could hear. He said, "Get your piece and go." So then Harisari was bewildered. First of all, for the last month, in order to hear what Nirguna was saying, you had to put your ear right on next to his ear because he was so weak. But here's this enormously intense kirtan going on, and Harisari could hear him say, "Get your piece and go." And he was bewildered by what he meant by that. So I said, "Nirguna, get your piece and go? Did someone say something to you?" He was thinking maybe someone said something to him and he was just repeating, or he just couldn't figure it out. And Nirguna said, "Yes, And so, who said something to you? And he said, Giriraj. So, but what did he mean by, what's peace? He was thinking maybe peace of mind, he couldn't figure it out. So then Nirguna said, what do you mean by peace? And he said, Giriraj. So then Hari started thinking, so Giriraj wanted you to take him and go? And Nirguna smiled and said, yes. And so then Nirguna, Hari said, did you get your invitation? And Nirguna said, yes. And he was just in complete bliss, chanting along with the kirtan, defying anything that Dr. Avnish knew about the dying process. It was completely miraculous. Has anybody fallen asleep yet? Sometimes I give these Bhagavatam classes, it's like ISKCON sleeping pill, okay? We don't want anybody to fall asleep now. Okay, so get your peace and go. So he got the invitation. He was going to take Giriraj and go. Okay? So shortly after that, he lost consciousness again. And then he left his body. Okay, so we had the devotee from the Goshala that knew all the samskaras, or the kind of the rituals for some Vaishnava after leaving the body. So we ushered everybody out of the room. There were like 4 or 5 senior devotees that stayed. We took his cloth off. We bathed his body. But we couldn't find Giriraj. That was the unusual thing. Giriraj wasn't there anymore. He'd been on his chest. So it was bewildering. And then after bathing his body, we put fresh cloth on, and then brought devotees back into the room. This was at 1:22 p.m. And I got there just in time because I was busy dealing with the government officials and everything. I got there like about 1:15 because my wife said, you got to get down here, you're going to miss Nirguna's departure. And so then everyone came back in, and the next step in the ritual was that I offered artik to Nirguna's body as he was sitting in a chair, kind of propped up, He left his body, but that's what they do, so I'm doing it. And as I was offering the incense and the flowers and the water, there were tears rolling down my cheeks. But they weren't tears of sadness, of pain. They were tears of ecstasy. It was just so blissful. And there was no question in anyone's mind that was present at the time of Nirguna's departure that he didn't go back to the spiritual world. It was clear. The atmosphere was just unbelievably blissful. Oh, and I left out an important point. Like three or 4 days before he left, he said to me, Janmashtami Prabhu, I thought this was going to be very difficult, but you and Sankalpa, that's my wife's name, made it easy. But it was just a very, very blissful experience for the whole community, for Nirguna. And then after, offering artik, then we put his body on a palanquin and circumambulated the samadhi. I went the wrong way 3 times. And then we went to the bathing ghat. It was still flood season, so we had to go by boat to the burning ghat. And so there was all these logs lined up, and then we put Nirguna's body on the logs, and I had the service of setting everything on fire. And as it burned, and this devotee from the Goshala was overseeing everything, one of his arms fell off, it burned off. And he picked it up and threw it back on the fire like it was a log, it was kind of remarkable. And so then after, it was a very blissful experience. It took about 2 hours, for the cremation to finalize, and it came to about probably around 7:30, and there was prasadam waiting for us in the gutter kitchen. So I was just complete blissed out. The tears weren't tears of sadness or pain; they were just tears of joy. That my good friend of 18 years of book distribution partnership was going back to the spiritual world. And I'm in ecstasy just telling the story. I've told it many times. Oh, and like at the opening of the hospice in Vrindavan, Dr. Avnish was there, he was there in charge, but it was a project of the Bhaktivedanta Hospital. Vishnu, what was it? Vishnu Priya? No. Vishnu Radha? Anyway, old brainitis again attacking. But he was one of the managers of the hospital, and he was emceeing. Oh, when I came I was supposed to meet Bhakti Vishwambar Madhava Swami there. We were doing things together with the Mayapur Institute. And Giriraj Swami's father was a very wealthy lawyer, and he had given a large inheritance. Giriraj Swami got a large inheritance from him. So most of the funding for the hospice in Vrindavan came through Giriraj Swami. So we have this opening ceremony. There were two ceremonies. The day before was all the big donors and the government officials, and then the second day was all the other devotees. There was about maybe 80 to 100 devotees in this large room. I come in there, and Giriraj Swami sees me. We were friends. Not friends, I was his servant. But he'd helped me a lot. I took courses at the VIT that inspired me to start the MI, Mayapur Institute. And he taught one on Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu verses that Krishnadas Kaviraj used in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. You're shaking your head. Did you take the course too?
I think so. I took some. I know I took a class taught by Giriraj Swami at VIT in Vrindavan.
Yeah.
I can't remember his Nectar of Devotion, but it sounds like probably.
Yeah, it was a lot of Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu verses. Real ecstatic. It transformed my life. I'd been a devotee for 12 years, but I learned more. There were 5 courses that were going on. I'd get up at 2, eat once a day, study, go to classes. All these senior devotees. Tamal Krishna Maharaj gave a course on Brahma Samhita, 1-month course. Giriraj Swami, basically a Nectar Devotion course. Bharijan, Bhagavad-Gita overview, Satsrup Maharaj, Prabhupada appreciation. And I'd been going to the Dham from 81, and practically every year I'd go, but this was unbelievable experience. The Dham just revealed itself to me. Before I was a tourist, oh, here's Radhakund, here's Govardhan Hill. But then I felt the internal energy of the Dham more so than ever, so blissful. And I learned more in that 1 month than I had in the previous 12 years, even though I was regularly reading. That's the power of studying in the association of devotees. There's a really nice verse, Bhagavatam 3.25, 20.25. Satam prasangam mamavirya samvido bhavanti ritkarna rasayana kata tajjoshana dashva pavargavartmanti shradavatir bhaktir anukramishati. That discussions of the pastimes and activities of the Lord in the association of advanced devotees is very pleasing to the ear and to the heart. And by doing this, one makes very rapid spiritual advancement. And I felt like it was incredible. And what was the most amazing thing, that when I got back to America, my service at that time was being the Sankirtan leader in the Brooklyn Temple. The North American BBT had sent me there because there were 35 new devotees, and they wanted me to train them up. So, and the temple, believe it or not, was about ready to be closed because they were failing to pay the city taxes, the water bill, and the sewage bill. And
What year are you talking about?
that 89. So January 89, I was in the VIT. And then in December 89, we had this big marathon. I brought Jadharani up from Atlanta, because just before that I was getting book distribution going in Atlanta. That was my service. And she's, she was here at 26 Second Avenue, did a lot of the paintings. That was her service.
That's the year you joined in,
Huh?
77.
No, he,
you.
Too much ecstasy, huh? So we did a big marathon, a 10-day marathon, and I went to Atlanta. I went to Charlotte, North Carolina, and I was working the Charlotte, North Carolina airport with a devotee, Jagya Purush, and he ran this for a while. And there were 8 other devotees working parking lots and shopping malls, selling books. And then we had a batch of devotees. We were working, Jagya Purush and I were working the Charlotte airport. And there was a Gulf War going on, and all these military personnel were coming through. And so we were selling Bhagavad-Gitas to them, the perfect matchup. You know, here they're going to go to the Gulf to get shot full of bullets and blown up, and we're giving them the Bhagavad-Gita. And like I was, you know, really pushing myself. I was doing $600 or $700 a day, and Juggy was doing about the same, a little bit less, I think. And then we had a batch of devotees working the airports in DC metro area. And then we had the ladies, they were all in New York, working Port Authority bus terminal, Grand Central Station, JFK, and LaGuardia. And in 10 days, guess what? Do you know how much we did? We did $45,000. And it blew everyone's mind, you know, that something like that, practically in the history of North American ISKCON, something on that level hadn't taken place. So it saved the temple from closure, and book distribution continued for quite a while there in a big way. Tigache, that's what we say in Bengal. You know what that means, Paul, right? Tigache? No?
No.
Means okay?
I don't know.
So the so don't think it won't happen to you. You know, it's actually you know, as I age, you know, I've had hip replacement. You know, I got an enlarged liver. It's not anyway. So many different things going wrong with the body, but they're just kind of preliminary exams, preliminary test for the life's final exam. Oh, and then I was going to tell, you know, that I was asked by Giri Swami to speak at the opening of the hospice in Vrindavan about the passing of Nirguna. So I went to the devotee that was emceeing and asked him, so how much time do I have? And he said, oh, like 5-10 minutes, like that. So I got called up there. I think I might have been the first or second speaker, because Giriraj Swami his heart was melted by the story. And you know, I told him when he came to Mayapur, you know, for the big yatra. And so I started speaking, and I kept going. And you know, just my heart was like, I just totally focused, and I just felt so. I felt that I connected with the audience in a big way. And so then I sat down, and I started thinking to myself, boy, I think I might have spoken a little bit longer than 5 or 10 minutes. So I went up to the devotee that was emceeing, and I said, Prabhu, I think I spoke a little bit more than 5 or 10 minutes. And he said, Janmashtami Prabhu, you spoke for 25 minutes. And I said, oh, I'm really sorry. He said, no, it's okay. Yesterday was Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti, today's Raganuga Bhakti. So the day before that I was there, that was when the VIPs and the government officials came. And so Vaidhi Sadhana Bhakti isn't spontaneous, but spontaneous, you know, comes when a little more juice is flowing, you know, in Krishna consciousness. Okay, does anybody have any questions or comments or rotten tomatoes they'd like to throw at me? Yes, Mata.
Hi, Hare Krishna. Maybe you have answered it and I don't understand. At the moment of death, if let's say someone is totally unconscious
There.
and was a Krishna devotee all her life, do they go back to the Lord after they depart? I mean, does the Lord
Well,
count that against them for not being able to chant anymore?
the answer to your question was in Srila Prabhupada's promise. I'll give you, okay? Yeah, you know, when Tamal Krishna Maharaj explained, Srila Prabhupada, how can I think of Krishna? My mind is simply filled with temple finances. So Prabhupada's response was, many, many lifetimes we've wasted on ourselves. Just in this one lifetime, if we can dedicate heart and soul to pushing on Lord Chaitanya's movement, then at the end, even if we're not completely perfect, Lord Chaitanya will personally come and take us back to Godhead. So that's the point. It's Lord Chaitanya's mercy. Even if there's some imperfection with the dying process. But if someone's been dedicated his whole life to pushing on Lord Chaitanya's movement, he'll take us back. And it's not just nirguna. This is one of the points that Giriraj Swami made. Many, many devotees had miraculous experiences at the end when they were, you know, in the final days of their lives. That's true.
I won't.
Throw a rotten tomato at me?
Sorry for.
You won't throw a rotten tomato at me?
Oh no,
Okay.
no. Thank you so much. It's very
All right.
wonderful to hear you speak about this. I could say something. I could have a story I could share, but it's long, and I don't want to divert from the focus. But I was thinking about what you said. That you said there's so many devotees, in addition to Nirguna, who've had miraculous experiences at the time of the final exam, the time of leaving the body.
Yeah.
And I have a personal experience of a family member who is not practicing Krishna consciousness during the life, but had association of devotees of some caliber here and there throughout half of his life, and he had a miraculous Krishna conscious experience at the time of death, merely by dint of that association, and I suppose the well wishes and the what's said in the Bhagavatam about generations.
21 generations in the future, 21 generations behind.
That they have the opportunity, they can get liberated due to being in the family of the devotee. So I was wondering, anyway, so I don't want to share that story now because it's amazing. So I was just thinking, maybe I'd tell you later. But do you have, wondering if you have any comment on that issue?
Well, I'm going down to Miami. My family members will be there, and I was raised in a pious family. My parents didn't drink or smoke, and my mother's father was a Methodist minister. He had 7 churches, and he would give sermons in all 7 on every Sunday, and he'd go by horse and buggy in central New York State to those different churches. My brother, he just retired as a president. He was president of 2 Presbyterian colleges spanning a 30-year period. And there was one that was called Arkansas College, and he got an $80 million donation and they changed the name of the college to Lions College. And then he moved back to the East Coast and finished up his time at Presbyterian College. He went to Harvard Divinity School, did a bachelor's, they call it Bachelor of Divinity, but it's actually a master's degree level. Then he went and got a PhD in psychology, focusing on the transition from youth to adulthood. And then he moved on to be a president of these colleges, and he's very pious. My mother, prior to her departure, said, "I'm so glad that Jim has dedicated his life to serving God." And my brother is very appreciative. He says that the well-educated Christian ministers are very appreciative of the Hare Krishna movement. Like we had.
Oh, and Jim was referring to you, your mother. What your mother?
Yeah. That was my name before Janmashtami. Yeah, and.
Sorry, you were saying the Christian ministers, they also...
Yeah, Diana Eck.
Diana Eck.
What was the name of the... there was another one. Marshall Rosenberg? No.
That person, I'm not familiar.
I think so. I think he was also one of the professors there, and they were just completely supportive. They wrote articles that appeared in Back to Godhead magazine. So they understand, this is real devotion, that's practiced by the Hare Krishna movement, Hare Krishna devotees. Very profound. And, but there's also Christians that are very devout, And my mother would always be reading the Bible half the night, growing up. So, but I'm pretty sure that, there will benefit, from what I've done as a devotee, and my efforts to get more and more onto the pure devotional platform, which is something that we all need to do. There's I'll share one shloka that you can all look at. I don't know what that is. That was on the stand here. Oh, it was in the Gita. Oops. There's a verse that describes the beginning of pure devotional service. It's you can look it up on your database on your phone. It's 11.20.27-28. Two verses together. 11.20.27-28. This is Krishna to Uddhava. But it's a real powerful understanding of how we can take ourselves, through the process of devotion, where we're currently situated in our level of advancement, and move on in a very powerful way. It's actually, our acharyas consider this mood that's described here as the beginning of pure devotional service. Having awakened, I'm just going to do the translation, having awakened faith in narrations of my glories, being disgusted with all material activities, knowing that all sense gratification leads to misery, but still being unable to renounce all sense enjoyment. My devotee should remain happy and worship me with great faith and conviction, even though he is sometimes engaged in sense enjoyment. My devotee knows that all sense gratification leads to a miserable result, and he sincerely repents such activities. So that's the beginning stage as described here by the Lord. So thus a sincere devotee's desire is to engage 24 hours a day in the loving service of Lord Krishna without any personal motivation. The devotee sincerely, I'm exiting some from the purport. The devotee sincerely desires to be established in his constitutional position as the Lord's eternal servitor, and he prays to the Lord to elevate himself and elevate him to this exalted position. So anyway, you can check that out, but it's a really powerful understanding of how we can make progress in devotional service and just keep the ball rolling, keep going, accelerate our advancement tremendously. And then, we experience what Prabhupada describes as real happiness. We become free of fear, through the process. There's no fear of death when you're actually we've made substantial advancement. Because you understand, your body. Your eternal soul, your eternal servant of Krishna. Yes, my dear friend. He's a Hagacharya.
Thank you so much. Nice to have you here, finally. Also, your teacher is a great example of how he handles adversity. Satsvarupa Maharaj is a great example how, even though with adversity, he still writes books, he still writes journals, he's still fully engaged in devotional service.
Even though he gets like 2 or 3 headaches a day, and some of them are migraines, or just excruciating pain. But yeah, I just spent 5 days with him. And now I'm going to go down, my wife's, my sister's son, my departed sister's son, they had real difficulty processing it because of a lack of an understanding. That's what I should do. I should give them Bhagavad-Gitas. You know? I'm just limited by Frontier Airlines with my weight limits. But anyway, maybe what I'll do is I'll stop in at one of the nearby temples and pick up a few copies. That's a good idea. Just thought of that. Yeah.
Bhakti Prabhupada Damodar Swami. I think he's over there in Miami.
Yeah, you know, also Lakshmi Nrsimha. He's in Boca Raton. No, he's got a project started there. He's got like about 30 Russian devotees, about 60 Indian devotees, and then the yoga devotees. But they're, you know, it's really starting to work. He's very enlivened. He just joined our team, the Srila Prabhupada Connection. This is a global initiative that we're working on to enable devotees to understand Srila Prabhupada's role in our movement and role in their individual lives, and access his Shakti so that we remain very strong and inspired as a movement for the next 10,000 years. Is there any other points? Yes, Boo.
Short comment, because you're speaking about how different, you're speaking about how different Christian ministers appreciate Krishna consciousness, and your brother, was the president of 2 Presbyterian colleges, that didn't know that. Back in around, I forget if it's December of 1992 or December of 93, for when I was trying to support the efforts of book distribution during the Christmas marathon at the Boston airport. And I distributed books to the original Billy Graham. So,
Wow.
and he gave a donation.
No kidding.
He was quite appreciative.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, he was very nice. For those who don't know, he was perhaps the most famous of all evangelical Christian leaders in the world.
Right.
What do you say?
Huge following. No, I mean, it's you know, there's validity to Christianity. It's just that there's misunderstandings that have taken place big time in the Christian tradition. And some of the big scholars, they know it. And they're trying to do something about it, but it's not so easy. Anything else? Shall we dive into the nectar of kirtan now?
Sure.
Someone else should lead.
I can do that.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for not throwing any rotten tomatoes at me.
So, and Prabhu, what about your timing?